A dozen glowing eyes closed in around Jack and his family, jaws snapping just inches away. Rex snarled in defiance, trapped between predator and protector. The forest held its breath as violence and survival collided under the fading light. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. The forest's hush was shattered by the low, menacing growl that curled through the damp air like smoke. Jack's eyes, sharp and unwavering, locked onto the snarling silhouette of Rex, whose ragged coat and wild eyes betrayed a life scarred by abandonment and brutality. Every muscle in Jack's lean frame coiled like a spring, his instincts honed from years of survival, teaching him that this was no ordinary threat. Rex was a storm of desperation, unrestrained and volatile. Jack's mind raced, weighing every option, every risk. His kits, small and inexperienced, trembled behind him, their wide eyes pleading for protection. Emma pressed close, a silent pillar of reassurance, trusting Jack's judgment as the family's shield. Jack's motivation was rooted deeply in love and responsibility. Not just survival, but preserving the fragile safety he'd built for his family. Each lesson he'd painstakingly passed to his kits, every cautious trail they'd traced together, all pointed to this moment, the raw test of his strength and cunning. He understood Rex's hunger wasn't born of malice, but of ruthless necessity. Yet that offered no comfort. The wild dog's dominance instinct was a direct threat to Jack's territory, his food supply, and the very lives of those he cherished. The air between them crackled with unspoken challenges, the scent of earth, sweat, and tension thick enough to choke. Rex's teeth gleamed in the dying light, his growl shifting into a harsh bark, a claim on the land Jack had called home for years. The dog's desperation twisted his snarls into something almost pleading, as if the wild animal beneath the rage was screaming for survival in a world that had turned its back on him. Jack's chest tightened with a fierce mix of anger and sorrow. Anger at this invader who threatened his family's peace, sorrow for the broken soul Rex represented. But mercy had no place here. Hesitation meant death. Jack's stance hardened, his tail flicking with restless energy, signaling his kits to stay close yet ready to learn. In that moment, the forest seemed to hold its breath, an ancient arena where survival, fear, and fierce devotion collided. Jack's protective fury flared like wildfire, but beneath it burned a calculated patience. He needed more than strength, he needed strategy. The stakes were terrifyingly clear. Failure meant losing everything to a desperate enemy with nothing left to lose. The forest's eerie stillness shattered with a howl that pierced the twilight like a jagged blade, raw and urgent. From the shadowed underbrush, eyes glinted, sharp, calculating, hungry. A pack of coyotes emerged, their lithe bodies slipping through the tangled thicket with a predator's grace, drawn by Rex's scent and the promise of turmoil. The sudden arrival transformed the standoff entirely. The tables turned, Rex no longer a dominant force, but a cornered, vulnerable figure whose snarls wavered between defiance and desperation. Jack's instincts surged. This was the moment he had to seize. The coyotes, a dozen strong, formed a tightening circle, their guttural growls resonating like a dark symphony in the crisp air. Yet beneath their savage intent lay something else, an unspoken hierarchy, a brutal dance of survival that left no room for mercy. Rex's hackles rose, his wild eyes darting between the encroaching shadows and Jack's unyielding gaze. But in that volatile tension, a revelation bloomed within Jack's mind, piercing through the haze of hatred like a sudden shaft of cold light. This wasn't simply a ruthless invader or a mindless beast. Rex was fractured, a creature marred by solitude, abandoned and thrust into a merciless world. His snarls masked a deep-rooted fear, a plea for connection, twisted by years of rejection. Jack's fury ebbed, replaced by a sharp, aching compassion that unsettled the primal edge of his being. He glimpsed in Rex a haunting reflection of his own fragility, how easily the fortress of family and safety might crumble, how loneliness could harden even the gentlest heart into steel and rage. Compassion softened Jack's eyes, yet it did not diminish his resolve. The pack's relentless circling threatened everything he treasured, the kits that depended on his guidance, Emma's quiet strength, the fragile peace of their home. This was no moment for mercy born of sentiment. It was a crucible demanding fierce protection. Jack's muscles tensed. Every sinew coiled for the desperate fight ahead. His mind sharpened, calculating angles and openings, relying on every lesson drilled into him by necessity and love. The snapping jaws of coyotes drew nearer, but Jack danced with a blend of grace and cunning, slipping through their ranks with lightning speed, each calculated snap and growl a defiant roar of survival. His movements blurred with the raw urgency of a father defending his bloodline against the encroaching chaos. The forest held its breath, the primal struggle echoing through the trees, a desperate symphony where compassion and fury collided in the dimming light. Jack's breath came in sharp, steady bursts as the last echoes of the coyotes' retreating snarls faded into the dark woods. His fur bristled with adrenaline, muscles still coiled from the fierce, desperate battle that had tested every ounce of his strength and spirit. The assault had been relentless, teeth flashing in the dim light, eyes burning with hunger and aggression. But Jack's determination carved a path through the chaos, each movement precise, calculated, fueled by an unwavering resolve to protect what mattered most. The kits, trembling but alive, emerged slowly from the thickets where fear had once held them silent and still. Their wide eyes locked onto their father, a living testament to survival against overwhelming odds. Rex's sudden retreat was more than a strategic withdrawal. It was a turning point etched in the raw honesty of the wild. The wild dog, beaten yet unbroken, recognized something in Jack beyond mere strength, an unyielding loyalty and courage that transcended instinctual violence. The air, thick with tension moments before, now held an unspoken truce, fragile yet potent. Rex's savage desperation gave way to a silent acknowledgement. Here stood a guardian, not a destroyer, and the rules of the forest had shifted beneath their paws. In the stillness that followed, the forest breathed again, leaves whispering, shadows receding, as if nature itself was exhaling relief. But inside Jack, something more profound stirred. The years spent in rigid hatred, the bitterness born from fear and loss, melted into a clearer understanding of survival's true cost. It was not merely about dominance or territorial pride, but about the fierce bonds that tethered him to his family and, unexpectedly, to the broken stranger who had once threatened them all. Compassion had crept into the margins of his heart, carving space for respect where there had been only enmity. Jack's gaze swept over his kits and Emma, each presence anchoring him to a new reality forged in fire and blood. His pride was tempered by humility, his relief shaded with wisdom earned through scars and sacrifice. The night's trials had reshaped him, proving that strength without mercy was hollow, and that courage could manifest not just in battle, but in the choice to spare, to understand, to embrace complexity where once there was only black and white. The story of that night would echo in the forest long after the echoes of growls faded, a testament to the quiet power of unexpected bonds and the enduring spirit of family.